Welcome back to livingwxithaclassic. We're here with this pretty late XJ6 Series 3. It might be an 86 or an 87. Of course, it's 4.2 fuel injected, and this is a US market one. It does have the air injection system has been disabled, and there's just a rail left. So pretty similar to European ones. Today, we're going to replace the fuel hoses and take out the injectors. Done these on V12s before and show you guys. It's very similar. I get the kits from Mr. Injector. I'll link them down below. And you get the 6 hoses you need. You get 6 filters for the injectors. You get new seals and little pinnacle caps. So great little kit. I also ordered a bit of extra fuel hose. I think it's really high quality fuel hose they have. So that's for the feed line and the return line. And a little bit of line here around the fuel pressure regulator. So pretty straightforward. I just drove the car in here about 10 minutes ago, and what I did now is I disconnected the fuel pump relay, which is right here. There's a banker relays up here. They might be moved around. Here it's the middle one, but it's the one with a white and green wire going to it. Disconnect that, and now we're going to crank the engine. It should fire and it should die pretty quickly. That way we have no fuel pressure in the rail and there's no issue taking anything apart. So let me crank it over. Might start, might not start, but at least we'll empty out any fuel pressure that's in the rail. Alright, so let's see. And it should be pretty dead now with no fuel pressure. Good. Now we can disconnect the battery and start disconnecting the fuel rail. I removed a couple of things, but that's mostly just to give you guys more room to see. It's not necessary to do the job, but it's just easier for me to film with the airflow sensor out of the way, air filter box, and this whole bend here. The bend here is just because later we want to replace this, which is the feed fuel line that goes down there. That's to get to that, and the rest is basically just so we can see better. So the fuel comes into fuel rail here, goes to your 6 injectors and your cold start injectors. There's 7 injectors here. Then it goes to your fuel pressure regulator. When there's more pressure, it bleeds off there and it goes around the front of the engine and goes over, and that is the return hose over there. So we'll be replacing all of that as well. The only thing I've done is I've used some penetrating fluid on these and on the bolts down here. Let's see if you can see any of them. Right there is one. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to loosen up there. There's 7/16, and then it's just the connectors. They can be a little bit fragile. I found the best way to get them off is just with one of these fuel hose pliers. Just go, get a good grip on it, and there you go. And then they come off. So we'll get those off, get that one off, and it's the ones under here, and then this whole fuel rail will lift out of the way. I've also removed one of the braces, just put it to the side, but that is sort of general maintenance on these engines. You're always moving those braces out of the way. Start by bleeding off any fuel pressure that's left up here. Let's see. Probably going to get a little bit, but probably not that much. I mean, there will still be fuel in the rail, but there's not going to be any pressure after starting up without the fuel pump relay. Now we can continue getting these connectors off. There are many different ways of trying to get them off, but they really do just pull off. There is no locking. There's a locking ring around, but it's not like later Bosch connectors where you push something to get them off. You just simply pull these. And yes, it is a Lucas system here, but technically this is Bosch Algetronic, which was Very common 80s, 90s fuel injection system. My first car had it. I had a 1985 Alfa Romeo Spider. This had this fuel injection system on it. I think like Volvos have them, like 740s. So it is not an uncommon fuel injection system. There we go. I have my 7/16 here, and I'm gonna get these nuts off here. All those nuts underneath there are off, and 2 mounting bolts over here. This mounting plate just goes down to the plate that holds the injector, so it should be able to stay. Of course, if you're only replacing fuel hoses, not going through injectors like I'm doing, you can, sort of do that in place just by removing the fuel rail and keeping the injectors in place, but we're doing everything. So I'm going to disconnect the fuel pressure regulator here, and after that it is just the cold start injector and a couple of vacuum lines, and all of this will lift out.
Here we have the fuel rail at the bench, and I've done a couple things off camera, but I'm going to show you all of it. So the only thing I've really done is I've cut off the hoses just on the middle, the old ones, and I'm not going to mess up the injectors. I'm going to put them back in the order they were in, and I've done 2 injectors here. So here's what they look like with the new hoses. There are different kits for different injectors and different fuel rails for different 4.2s. Some of the earlier cars had a different style fuel rail, and they are actually the ones that use both clamps like these. These are the later style, and you can read off the injectors. They're supposed to use these sort of locking clamps on the injectors, just like the HEs do on the V12s. So that's what I've been doing here. So the only thing I've done on these, but I'm going to show you all of this, is I've changed out the filters. Here is what the old ones look like. And I changed out the pinnacle caps and the hoses. So then it's time to cut the hoses off here to do all of that. However, it's easiest to put all the injectors on at once when I've done that. So let's take an injector, we'll put it in the vise, and I'll show you how to remove the hose, how to remove the filter, the pinnacle cap, put all new things back together and get it ready. Then I'll do the rest of them. We'll put them all on the fuel rail, put it back on the car, and do the other ones. The tools you need are pretty basic. A good knife. You need a screw that will fit in the top of the injector. Let me show you. To pull out the old filter. You will need something to hold on to the screw to get it out of there. A good hammer. And I recommend one of these sort of quick grip things. So that is to put everything back together. You'll see all this in a little bit, but I have drilled a hole in the middle there. That is so I can put the bottom end of the injector towards there without damaging it. And then up there, I remove the soft rubber thing, and that is just to push the pinnacle cap and the filter in all in one motion. But let me show you all of this. We will grab one of these injectors, clamp it in the vise on the injector body. Just get a good steady clamp on that. It would be different if these still had the original locking clamps. You need to cut this off with a hacksaw. If you want to see how that is done, I will link down to my V12 video on replacing the injector hoses on the V12. You can see that, but it is very, very straightforward. Just need to be a little bit careful when you cut them off. So they are here, so you'll take a hacksaw blade, cut the edges off here, and then get these off. So I like to cut off the hose so I don't have that much left. And then this is the part that's the difficult part, cutting the hose off. You don't want to cut this way, because then you will make a mark on the metal part of the injector, and that is a potential leak. However, if you cut this way, you won't make a mark. And you can just do a little bit first, you see there, and then we can do a little bit more. You see, just doing a little bit at a time. Now we can start seeing the metal part inside, and then I'll cut down here in the middle. Now you will see right there. So you see, this is a good example. If you do make a tiny bit of a mark there, that is going to polish out. However, a deep cut that way with a knife is not. So then, just see right now I'm pulling it apart, and that's it. Then, I like to grab, this is 400 paper. Just grab a little bit, sort of clean up the edges. It's the high spots here that seal, so those are the ones that are important. And this just cleans it up, and I do this before I remove the filter. That way nothing will go inside the injector. You see, that looks nice. And for instance, if you do happen to make a tiny bit of a cut like I did right there, that was really just because the camera was sort of in the way of where I like to stand, so I couldn't really see. But you see, you can just polish them away like that. So once you've done that, you can blow it with some compressed air or just your mouth. We are going to grab that screw that we just had. And just do this carefully. You just need like one thread in there. And then hold on around it and whack it. There you go. That pulled out the injector basket, or I mean the little basket filter. Remove that. What I like to do is take some type of penetrating oil, like WD-40 or something similar, and just spray it in here. And then when I turn it upside down, any dirt that was in there will sort of fall out. But also, if it takes a little bit of time before you get these on the engine and fire them up, you will have something in there that will remove moisture and keep it lubricated so the injectors don't stick. But I do recommend when you do this job, don't let them sit for too long before you fire up the engine. If you've done a whole sort of rebuild of the engine, don't do this job first. Have this be your last job, and then hopefully fire it up within a week or so, or less. Injectors don't like to sit without fuel in them. See here, we're removing the pinnacle cap. I am just cutting it a little bit with the knife here, and it is so brittle always that they come off very easily. Then I take this here, and I'm not putting any force really at all, just here on the sides, and it fell off. Let me see here. You see, they're quite brittle, so you could almost pull them off with your hand once you crack them a bit, but there we go. That's off. Now just inspect everything here. It looks really, really nice. No problems there. I'm going to clean up the area here before putting the new pinnacle cap on. This part here is where the seal goes on later, but I don't put those seals on until right before I put the injectors in the car, just so you don't lose them. Looking pretty good. I am going to grab one pinnacle cap and one little filter. So here is the pinnacle cap, and there is the filter. And you could think, oh, I'll just press those in with a vise. Yeah, but a vise is too powerful. You might break something. That's why one of these clamps are good, because they're really not that strong. So we'll put this part against where the hole is drilled. And then I'll just start pushing it on. So you see that clicked in there. Now you may need to reposition it just to get the filter on. Like I said, you don't want to put too much pressure on anything here. You can watch there, and there we go. Filter is in as well. So pinnacle cap, you haven't damaged the tip, and the filter is on. Now I like to put it back in the vise, and we'll grab this ring. So the way these work is it's a one-time way to push on the hose. It's a bit like a fishing hook, so it can only go one way. So you push the hose on, and then this holds tight against the outside so it won't push up again. That works very well. I like to use a tiny bit of lubrication. This is clean engine oil, but just not very much. Just a very, very small amount. Just so you make sure you get it all the way in the bottom. You see it's all the way in the bottom, and then you can't really turn the hose or turn this. It's all stuck together perfectly. So that is one injector done. I'll do the other ones, and then we can put them back in the car, put them onto the fuel rail again. And the only thing that you need to do before you put them in the car is put this little seal on. Make sure that it's not stuck in the manifold on the car, because some get stuck in there and some are on the old injectors. But I don't put these on until right before I put them on the car, so I don't lose them. And of course, getting the old hose off the fuel rail is pretty much the same procedure. There we go. So we can remove all of those, and then everything is ready to put back on the car. Got the last two injectors here. The other four are in, so don't forget about the seals in there. Also, have a look at the ports. Make sure that the old seals are out of them and clean them out. So I've done that, and it's just a matter of sliding them into place. And then lining up the little two holes here. So really pretty straightforward. On here, I feel like it's easier to put the injectors on the engine or the inlet and then put on the fuel rail. Where on the V12, I think it's easier to do everything on the bench and just put it all together. When you start tightening them down, make sure that the connections are pointing straight up, because if they're not, you won't be able to get the connectors on. There is, holes here on the sides or extra space around the brackets to get the electrical connectors on there all the way. So, make sure that they're in the right position. You saw there I had to push it out so it clicks a little bit. So make sure that you get them in the right position, and that's tight enough. And just snug this one down a little bit also. It should be good, and basically what you're looking for is that you can't move the injectors and they're all the way in place. Now, I'm just going to get the fuel rail, hook that up, then we have a couple more fuel lines to replace. Just lay the fuel rail on here loosely, because I want to see which way is the best way to put the clamps. So for instance, I don't want anything to be in a close vicinity where it can rub on something and create any issues. So now I can put all the clamps on in the right position I want them. I can start getting the fuel rail started on here. It's very important that it, of course, goes all the way on. And let's start a couple here. Got all the fuel hoses on all the way. Before you do the last ones over here, make sure that you have this bracket on the right side on top of there. Just makes it a little bit easier. I'm going to tighten down the bracket, holding us in place. Tighten down the hose clamps, so move them up into place, tighten them down. Plug in my injectors. I am also going to replace this hose down there. Then we're going to replace the feed line, this part of the return, and the return on the other side as well. All the fuel hoses around have been replaced. So the one up here to the cold start injector, the one up there, the one up front, the return on that side you can see next to the cruise control. And we have the main feed up here. I'm going to connect that once I have the elbow back in place. So I'll put that back on, the airflow meter. We'll hook this up. We'll turn it on, check for leaks, and hopefully fire it up. With everything back together, it's time to prime the fuel system and check for leaks. I have put the relay back in for the fuel pump. However, on an XJ6, you don't get any prime with the key. You can do this in another way. So you can put it in a gear, like drive. Make sure you have the parking brake on and your foot's on the brake. Turn to the crank position. It shouldn't crank, but the fuel pump should run. And I am hearing the fuel pressure regulator. It opened, so let's go and have a look for leaks. See if we have leaks anywhere. So I'm just gonna feel at every single fitting. That feels good. Oh, I see a leak, and I just realized that's because I forgot to tighten it up. Right here, I didn't tighten that up. Let me tighten that up and then we'll check again, but I think that is the only thing, which is my fault completely. I primed everything again for about another 30 seconds and everything is nice and dry now. Down here as well, just tighten that up. That was my fault, completely forgot. But everything else seems nice and tight. Let's fire it up and see how it runs.
All right, let's go for the first start. Put it in park. And let's see. Fire it right up. Then we go around with a flashlight, check for leaks.
It's smoothed out now. It wasn't running at all, and I found the issue. That little injector cable there was loose. It's missing its little spring. I didn't notice that before, so I'm gonna get a spare one put on there and lock it into place. So it wasn't firing on all the time, but now it's very smooth. Still cold, but warming up, and running really well. I'm gonna push it outside a bit so it doesn't smoke up the shop. We'll warm it up and then I will change the oil. This thing is ready to go back to its owner. And that's how you replace all the fuel lines in the engine bay on an XJ6 Series 3. I have a link down below to all the parts I used, so you can order those. I'm really happy with these fuel lines. It's the only fuel lines I use on the Injector cars. I also use some of the carb ones as well because they're so good. They can withstand all the modern fuels and they're just really, really good. So you'll be very happy with those as well. Anyways, that's it for the Series 3 for now. It's ready to go back to its owner, but we fixed a lot of things. It runs as it should now. It's nice and smooth. The electric windows work. A couple other small things as well. It goes into gear as it should. And yeah, it actually starts cold now as well. Anyways, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with friends. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a lot. Till next time, I'm Adam. This was Living with a Classic. I'll see you soon.